And we are back with another edition of How About Them Celtics, talking C's with Bobby Kravitsky of SI Media Group. Bobby, how are you doing today?
Doing fantastic. It was an emotional day in the Garden on Sunday. Marcus Smart's return, not a dry eye in the house, even with him on the sidelines. And a classy touch by the Celtics organization to also honor him as the hero among us for the evening. First off, well-deserved. I wrote about everything that he's done in the community, from smart cards to children's hospital visits and the Young Game Changer Foundation, of course. But also it just created this additional moment strictly dedicated towards the fan base being able to shower him with the love and affection that they feel for him. And so it really, I felt, allowed everyone to maximize Marcus Smart's return.
Yeah, I mean, it was getting real dusty up on the ninth floor. I'll say that. Tribute was great. Smart's reaction was great. The bench from the Celtics was great. The quotes were great. I'm sure we'll talk about those too. It was everything you wanted it to be, especially considering the game was probably the worst game of the season to watch. When there was two players on the Grizzlies that I had never heard of, and I think I can say the same for you, perhaps, unless you'd heard of. I don't even remember their names. Trey Jemison was one of, and then, God, I need to go look it up again because I truly just don't know their name. It
the
is
guy. I feel like you're going to
Tauson Iwoma. Yep. Tauson Iwoma.
Nicely done.
I don't say that. I'm looking at Basketball Reference pronunciation guide. But I'd never heard of either of them. So that's the context for the Grizzlies game. So it truly was Celtics versus Marcus Smart that night, and he wasn't even playing. So it was a great tribute video. The Heroes Among Us was great. The quotes during the game was great. Do you have a favorite quote from the night from Smart or a player or anything just on what was effectively Marcus Smart night?
I don't know if I have a favorite quote that I place above the rest, but I did want to know what his message to the fan base was. What does he want them to know from his end? And so when his message of just, I love you guys, you will always be in my heart, that was emotional and exactly what you want to hear if you're a Celtics fan. So as stunning as it was, perhaps, that Marcus Smart didn't cry, even Jason Tatum said that post-game. He was surprised. He thought there'd be some waterworks on Marcus's end. You could see he was getting emotional. He held it together on that front, so no tears. But that message of just, hey, this is my second home. And he spoke with me as well about how the city of Boston shaped him. He arrived at 20 and left at 29. So he'd spent nearly half his life in this adopted city of his that helped to raise him. He went through so many highs, Jack, from the Defensive Player of the Year, becoming the first guard to win that award since Gary Payton. He helps the Celtics get to the finals, and they're 2 wins from becoming the team that raises Banner 18 to the rafters. And then, of course, the tragic low of just his mother's passing due to cancer. And all of that was experienced while he was in Boston. The wedding itself happened right after he got traded, but he got engaged while he was a Celtic living in the city. And so it really was someone who came as a young adult and then made that important transition and maturation in their life. And all of that happened within Boston.
Yeah, I mean, that answer he gave you when you asked him the question was incredible. It was probably my favorite of the night, or one of them. I mean, Tatum after the game was like, Marcus Smart, he was the fan favorite. Everyone knew it, the way he played. He wore his heart on his sleeve. We have some very smart fans, and they saw that. They appreciated it, and it was really cool to see. I'm surprised he didn't cry, like you mentioned, he said, because it was special. Al Horford talking about Smart and Isaiah Thomas are the reasons that he came to Boston in the first place, even though Smart was 21, 22 at the time, super young.
You could see it. Al's a winner.
It was a great night for a great person. And I went on this rant on the show last night when we did our pod, because I feel like there's still some people in our comments even, and you saw it on Twitter, that were there was one commenter who was like, his game was lacking, but he was a good person. And so I guess I respect it. Even if you dislike the way he played, that you can respect what he did and the impact he made. But I saw something on Twitter, and it could have been a troll, it could have been whatever, but I got mad at it regardless, because I don't think there's a place for it. There was somebody who said, do you think he gets booed? I think it's a real question. He cost them championships. They made me so
trash.
mad.
All of that is garbage.
It made me so angry, because just even if you don't like who Marcus was as a player, and I wrote this in my article, I said the trade they made was objectively good for the team, right? Because Kristaps has been great. He's been a perfect fit. On court, it makes sense. It makes all the sense in the world. But basketball isn't just on court. Fans have the luxury of having this, tunnel vision where they can just look at the court and that is where they can base their opinion. But players have lives, they have emotions, they have families, they have like a life off the court. And they share that life with their teammates, and they have interactions with their teammates away from the hardwood. And it's not everything that goes into being a team and goes into being successful happens in the 48 minutes. 48 minutes. Yeah. I was like getting confused with the timing. I don't want to misspeak, but in the 48 minutes that I spend playing together on the court that the fans get to see. And everything Marcus did outside of that time was just as impactful, if not more so, than what he did on the floor. And that's why he was so revered by his teammates. That's why he was so well respected around the league. That's why he was so loved in the community. And that's why he should be welcomed with open arms when he comes back as a visitor or in any capacity. And people who just look at the 3-point percentage and the turnovers and the on-court fit, like, touch grass, like understand, like do more than just focus on basketball for like 1 second and appreciate what he did. And I saw Gary Washburn, who's been covering the team for ever, on Twitter today, said, should they retire his number? Yeah. And if he's saying that, then like the fact that I said this to Sam, the fact that it's even a conversation, he didn't win a title and it's even a conversation, should tell you how big of an impact Marcus Smart made in Boston.
Yeah, spot on across the board there. Saw the piece from Gary Washburn. Well done. And first one to get to it. So props to him. It's the reason Gary Washburn is who he is. And I totally agree. I think Marcus Smart deserves it. I think it's a testament to everything, deservedly so, who he is as a person, his unbreakable bond with the city, his impact in the community, what he did as a player. Think about this, Jack. He arrived to a team that had just gone 25-57 and was in the start of a rebuild. They made the playoffs every year he was here. And beyond that, they never had a negative net rating with him on the floor. Not once. He always literally made a positive impact, and the metrics will capture that. That's who he is. So was he the best of 3-point shooters? No. Did he sometimes have frustrating turnovers? Sure. Were there concerns about the injuries from his balls to the wall style of play? Yeah, but at the same time, he consistently gave you everything he had, and it translated to productivity and a positive effect on the outcome, and typically wins. This was a team that was perennially in the Eastern Conference Finals in his time here. And no, he wasn't the best player on the team, but he had the respect of the stars and was able to constantly challenge Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. And they would listen and they would take his advice even when they didn't want to hear it, at least most of the time. And so that tells you about how they felt about Marcus Smart and the respect that the stars had and how Marcus made them better.
Couldn't agree more. I love Marcus. He's probably my favorite Celtic of all time. That's right around the era when I started like fully following the Celtics. I was a baseball kid growing up, and then I started watching fully Celtics and fully like investing myself into Boston Celtics basketball when Jeff Green was my favorite player. And so Marcus Smart came in. From then on, it was Marcus Smart all the time.
Jack,
Next
also,
thing we got.
I just think it's so cool in the video tribute, for Marcus to go from the guy who was at Kevin Garnett's, and it's a game where he ends up with the hustle play and Garnett gives him the pat on the butt, and now he's the one getting the video tribute. I just think that's such a cool full circle moment.
Yeah. The fact that he gets as much love as Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce, and he didn't win a title in Boston, again, tells you how big of an impact he had on the city. Shout out Marcus. Like I said, my all-time favorite Celtic. He's just... it got me last night. I can't lie. It got to me. All right. Moving forward, we can talk very briefly about the game. It sucked. It was terrible. Like it was just Marcus that night. Like they blew him up by 40. There was like a stint in the first quarter and beginning of the second quarter. Like the first quarter and a half was like Celtics kind of looked like they were lollygagging. Like they weren't really trying. The offense was blah. They were giving up offensive rebounds. And so if you want to take anything from that and call it a concern, I guess that Grizzlies team, like I don't think you can have any takeaways from that game because that was an AAU team.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't great. It was lazy threes, and they gave up 12 offensive rebounds, 9 second chance points, but they were playing the freshmen, and they don't need
Yeah.
to go all out for 48 minutes. One approach is, especially coming off the Lakers loss, we're going to blow doors right away and close this game out early. Another one is to go on a 22-6 run and crank it up late in the second quarter, put it away. Everyone got the fourth quarter off entirely, or in the case of Drew Holiday, he played about 3 minutes in the final frame. So as Joe Mazzulla said, they did what they were supposed to. They handled business, and now it's on to the next one.
Yeah. And we can leave the Grizzlies game talk there. Talk about another guy, Jordan Walsh, who got his first bucket. First NBA bucket in the game. Big dunk, threw it down, making a cut in transition. John Corrales was asking a lot about it after the game, how he wasn't like pressing to get his points. He was just playing the right way, which I think is huge. I don't know how much you can take away from like garbage time. Peyton Pritchard, from end of the game minutes for these guys. But Jordan Walsh has been playing well in Maine, got his first buckets. The crowd clearly loves Jordan Walsh, which is interesting to me. I think it's kind of cool, but it's kind of like random. Like I haven't like they didn't do this for JD Davison, really. They didn't do this for like other rookies in recent memory. But Boston seems to really have attached themselves to Jordan Walsh, which is cool. But yeah, he got his first buckets. It was a cool moment, and he's playing well in Maine. So, yeah.
Well, it's a belief. I think that's where the attachment stems from for one and didn't for the other, is that they recognize Jordan Walsh can be a rotation player. And if the shot comes around, he could go as high as becoming a starter one day. And so there is a connection to, we might have just hit on a second round gem, and Celtics fans have an affinity for players who take this approach. Jordan Walsh talked about how defense is his personality, and that Marcus Smart is an inspiration to him, that he wants to follow in those type of footsteps. And that he looked at the Jumbotron for the video tribute, and it's a lot of diving on the floor and blocking shots and taking charges. And he said that's a testament to the Celtics fans, and that they know that and love it about him, and the culture of the franchise. And so that's who he is. It's who he is striving to grow into even further. And I think it's why there's already a connection, because of the type of player Jordan Walsh is and the potential that he has.
Yeah, I mean, you could see it when he came into the league. You could see it in the scouting reports. Like the top thing everywhere was plays really hard, right? He'll put his body on the line, hard-nosed defense. And I think almost in a weird way, because Boston lost Marcus, they saw this guy who was drawn. I don't want to say they were comparing him to Marcus, but you could obviously see the similarities. They were like, all right, well, we got this guy now, right? He'll be the new Marcus, even though that was never going to happen in year one. Like you can still kind of see it. And I think the Celtics do have a long-term plan for him to be in the rotation and help them in the future. However, for now, he's killing it up in Maine. I wonder what he's averaging. I can go double check, but I know he was playing pretty well last time I looked.
I can tell you this, that Brad Stevens, and that's his first pick, he loves Jordan Walsh.
Mm-hmm.
So I can tell you that he's a big fan of his and a believer in what he can become. And Brad Stevens was one of the first to come out and support Aaron Nesmith, and look at what he's become with an opportunity. I think it's undeniable that Stevens has a good eye for player development and potential.
Yeah, 14 games in the main regular season this year. He's averaging 16 points. I'm rounding. 16.8 rebounds, 1.5 assists, a steal and half a block on 42.6 shooting and 36 shooting from three on 6 attempts a game from deep. So pretty good player. Like he's playing hard. He's getting after it up there, which is good for him. JD Davison also playing really well up in Maine, although I'm more skeptical on his transition to the NBA than I think some people are. But regardless, Jordan Walsh playing very well, doing very well. Got his first NBA points, and the crowd was hyped. And Noah Dalzell, Celtics blog, wasn't working. Just decided to film everything from the crowd and make us all look bad anyways. Beast. Shout out Noah.
Shout out Noah.
Next thing we got is Michael Scotto of Hoops Hype dropped a trade intel article. Boston Celtics were mentioned, and they're staying active. He said, despite sitting atop the league, Boston have been active ahead of the trade deadline. Celtics are looking to package some of their minimum contract players to end a rotation and draft pick compensation to bolster their bench heading into the playoffs. League sources told Hoops Hype. Boston's expressed interest in a wide range of targets, including Kelly Olynyk, DeLon Wright, Andre Drummond, and others. League sources told Hoops Hype. Drummond would fit the parameters of Boston's current compensation package above, while Olynyk and Wright would likely cost more. Thoughts on those 3 targets, and particularly thoughts on the fact that how are they going to get Kelly Olynyk? Like, you tell me, because I don't see a pathway.
Yeah, I don't see a pathway. He was someone I wrote about last year as a potential trade target when it seemed realistic. It would have included Peyton Pritchard. And this year, what I wrote about is how it's now shifted and it's become unrealistic, because there's a lot of talk of, can they get him? Could he end up on the buyout market and they sign him? But when you look at his contract, you understand that's not happening. And so when it comes to it, yeah, Kelly Olynyk would be a home run addition. And I remember speaking to Brad Stevens at a media scrum about, hey, there's a lot of talk of, can you guys add a rotation caliber big to the mix here just to give yourself an insurance policy? Kristaps Porzingis, he had the plantar fascia in the offseason and then a bunch of lower body injuries over the course of this campaign already. So are you comfortable going past the deadline with what's on your roster and not a meaningful addition who can at least play the 5, if not the 4 and the 5? And he seemed to be he's a very skilled poker player. I'll say that. But at least the answer we got was basically that they are comfortable with what they have, and more acknowledging the difficulty in getting a rotation caliber big man with how limited they are in resources. So Kelly Olynyk would be a great fit here, but it's just not realistic to think that they part with what's needed to acquire him.
Yeah. So listen, I would love Kelly Olynyk in Boston. I think he is as close to the perfect backup big man, not just for the Celtics, but in the NBA. He can pass, he can shoot. He's actually a pretty underrated defender, I would argue. Like, he can stand up straight and he can play solid defense in the post. He's not the most switchable, but he can get there, right? Like, he'll be okay. There is a world, right? There's a world where it is possible. Peyton Pritchard, and then the four minimum guys, Brissett, Svi, Delano, and Delano and who am I forgetting? Lamar, gets you there, gets you to 12. On top of that, you could also take Chris Dunn into the TPE if you really wanted to say, what about the guard depth? Because you could take Chris Dunn into the Grant TPE in the same trade. What it would cost? Like, would Utah do that for that and 2 first-round picks?
By the way, Chris Dunn is having a good season, especially
this
defensively. That's not just okay, here's Chris Dunn. Exactly.
That's why I said you probably got to throw in another pick for Chris Dunn. But like, you're talking like I don't know, a first for Kelly, a first for Chris Dunn, and Peyton Pritchard, or Pritchard and a first for Kelly effectively, and a first for Chris Dunn, and then the minimum contracts to make it work. Like, are you doing that? Are you doing? And I'm not saying this is realistic, but like, are you doing that package for those 2 players?
I think you can get Chris Dunn for multiple seconds, especially in today's day and age where those have more value than before. But I don't think the Celtics want a backup point guard who can't shoot the ball. And so that's why
you say that. He shooting really well on a lot of it. Well, not a lot of attempts, but the past 2 seasons, 1.6 threes per game last year in his 22 games, 43 games this year, 1.4%. Last year, 47% from 3. This year, 41% from deep. So he's turned a corner.
On less than 2 attempts.
I know it's low efficiency.
We'll go with turn to corner.
Okay.
I can co-sign that. Yeah. I mean, look, it is a built-in replacement. I don't know I think that really does depend on how the Celtics look at Porzingis and what their comfort level actually proves to be. If that's a deal that can get done, let's call it a first in multiple seconds, plus Pritchard in the contracts necessary. You get Olynyk, you get done. I think that depends on what they prioritize there. They could say, look, we have Derek and Drew in the backcourt, and this is going to be more important and keeps us afloat. If God forbid we lose Porzingis, we still like our chances. So maybe that is ultimately, it tips the scales in that direction. Jack, if they decide to really upset the apple cart, I brought this up to you yesterday. I wonder how aggressive they're willing to get in a potential pursuit of Alex Caruso, and to have the trio, because they can get him if the Bulls are willing to part with him, and maybe that answers a no. But I think even with as stubborn as that franchise can be, everyone has a price. And if they were to add him to the mix, not only do you have an incredible backcourt trio with him, White, and Holiday, but it gives you flexibility moving forward when it comes to a Drew Holiday extension, unless something was promised on that front at the time they acquired him, because the expectation was that in early April, once Holiday's eligible, that a deal is struck between the two sides. We'll see, though. And with Derek White, they chose not to get a deal done before the season started. I would think there's an extension coming his way, down the road, but it just gives the Celtics more flexibility on that front, not to mention a higher margin for error if you add Alex Caruso to the mix.
Definitely. Michael Scotto also had some insight onto that, saying elsewhere, Chicago continues to have a high asking price on Caruso of the equivalent of 2 first-round picks to consider moving the all-star guard, or all-defensive guard, I should say, which is considered great value across the league given his production. Listen, as soon as you said that to me, or since you said that to me, I should say, like, I have been more in on the, okay, I wouldn't hate that. 2 first-round picks for Caruso. Sign me up. I do it. Like, I do for 2 first-round picks, and past that, like, I said it at the start of the season, and I said I'd be hesitant to give up Pritchard for Caruso, not because Pritchard is a better player by any means, but because the Celtics, in their current financial situation, like, he's under contract for 4 more years after this one. Like, that's huge. It's so big, and he's such a productive guard at the number he makes. And so I stand by that I'd still be a little hesitant. I would almost rather see them. I don't know if I'd rather trade the farm of everybody else for him, because then that leaves you really strapped for, like, even close to rotation players. So I don't know about that, but I am more open to the idea of Pritchard in a Caruso trade now than I was at the start of the season. He's just so good. They'd have the 3 best 3-and-D guards in the NBA in D White, Drew Holiday, and Alex Caruso. He'd immediately step in and take those Pritchard minutes and elevate them to another level, and could play more minutes and save some rest for the starters. He's a legitimate playoff player. Not that Pritchard isn't, but in terms of defense, like, that is probably the one downside on the Celtics team, is that they have probably just one guy who you can really attack on defense, and that's Pritchard. And he holds his own. I'm not saying he's a bad defender, but, like, adding Caruso in his place immediately takes that away and then some. So I'd be in on it. I don't know if he is one of the guys they're looking into. I have to imagine he is. Like, he screams Brad Stevens, but that'd certainly be interesting. And then the other 2, DeLon Wright, Andre Drummond. Any interest there? DeLon Wright just extra doesn't make sense because he doesn't fit into the TPE. Like, he's fine, but, like, he just seems like if Alex Caruso is A tier and Chris Dunn is C tier, DeLon Wright seems like the B tier version of those 2 players.
Yeah,
so he's all right.
I'd put him at B-.
Yeah.
So yeah, DeLon Wright, I'd be surprised. That seems like making a move for the sake of making a move, and considering he doesn't fit into the TPE, I'd bet against that one. Andre Drummond, look, the Celtics have shown interest in the past. I'll say that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not the biggest fan because he's such a defensive liability. The Celtics saw that firsthand in the Brooklyn series a couple of years ago. So for me, it would be a no. But I'll always remember Ryan Russillo on the Bill Simmons podcast, I don't know, a year and a half ago, something like that. He said that he spoke to someone who was in the Lakers organization at the time that they signed Drummond, and he was kind of voicing some of the concerns that I have, especially, again, defensively. And a Lakers executive told Ryan Russillo, there's just something valuable in having someone that size, even that during warmups, when the other team has to look out and know that's someone they have to deal with and battle on the boards against, that it's nice to have that in your back pocket.
I think, all due respect, who'd you say said that? Was it Ryan Russillo or who?
Ryan Russillo relaying what a Lakers executive told him when they signed Andre Drummond.
With all due respect, that was the Lakers executive coping because they signed Andre Drummond. With all due respect.
He was someone who was pushing for the move.
Dude, I don't dislike Andre Drummond, right? I think there is a place where he can have an impact. The other team looking over and seeing a big body is the biggest load of garbage. I have, like, really? That's it? Like, that's it. If that's where his value starts and ends, then why? Why pay him $2 million to play basketball? Like, And like I said, I like Andre Drummond. I think he's a fine player. I think he can help Celtics on the glass. I think there's a place for him. I don't think he plays over Luke Cornett. And at that point, why? Right? Like at that point, what's the point? Like maybe he plays over Kata, but does he? And I don't. I'm not against the idea. If they traded for Andre Drummond tomorrow, I wouldn't be sitting here like, why? What's the point? Like, what are you doing? Like, it'd be like, okay, sure. I guess I'll help you in certain spots. Like, they definitely got a plan for him. But it just seems like there's something better you can do with the TPE. I'd rather them trade for John Conchar and have $6 billion plus in the next 3 years to throw around in trades.
Wholeheartedly.
Like, it just, I don't know.
I'm not a Drummond guy. I said that at the beginning, where he's just such a defensive liability that I think Celtics fans would be pulling their hair out, especially if he's in a playoff game. I think that he would be best avoiding his mentions on Twitter should that unfold. There's value with the screening and the rebounding and the lob threat, but ultimately he is a net negative.
Yeah, I'm not in on Andre Drummond. Last thing. There are going to be 2 all-star spots opening up soon in the East. Theoretically, unsure about Randall's timeline to return, but Embiid is going to be out for at least a couple months, probably more than that, with a meniscus tear because he's having surgery on it. Julius Randle is still out with a shoulder injury. He separated his shoulder, I think, or dislocated it.
There might be a more refined diagnosis, but for us, we'll go with he separated his shoulder.
Yeah, so
it's a shoulder injury for sure.
Yes, so there could be 2 spots opening up in the East. Do we think the Celtics get one? I would hazard a guess that they get at least one. I don't know if they get both with KP and D White. I personally think Trae Young will probably get one of those spots, and deservedly so. I argue with Sam on here all the time. Sam doesn't like Trae Young, but I mean, it's hard to argue the impact he has on that Hawks team, regardless of how good they are. So that leaves one spot for the Celtics. It's just like basketball math says, okay, guard gets in there, probably put KP in the other spot to balance out the roster. However, what's the argument in your eyes from a completely they probably need a big man perspective of who deserves to be on the All-Star team more, KP versus D White?
Yeah, and we can put all 3 in the conversation. Trae Young,
Sure.
Derek White, Kristaps Porzingis. And if I were to say who is the most deserving, then I'd go with the same answer that I submitted when we put together our all-star rosters and we're looking at reserves. And I know that Sam, the other member of this triumvirate, doesn't want to hear it, but I give more weight towards being the number 1 option. And you can talk to me about the record and all that, but I think that he's having a really good season. And there's been growth in terms of, it's not his abilities as a passer, it's his impact as a facilitator has increased this season. So I would give the nod if I'm just putting one person in and I'm ignoring positions and all that. I would give it to Trae Young. With that said, both of these fill-in spots are coming via front court openings. And so I think it's going to Kristaps Porzingis. And when it comes to that other spot, it's just hard for me to fathom that two fill-in spots go to players from the same team. So I bet against that. I think it's ultimately going to be Porzingis and Trae Young.
I agree. I think Derek White deserves it more. And I agree with the logic, and I think that will probably be what it ends up being with Trae Young and KP. And I'm not saying Derek White's a better player than Porzingis. I'm not saying Porzingis sucks or anything like that. But you can obviously sit here and argue that Kristaps Porzingis, the way he's changed the Celtics offense and the way he has impacted the team in that way with his presence is, more impactful or better or any of this. Derek White's steadiness, his ability to run the offense, take pressure off of the Jays. He's played in 10 more games. His defense at the guard spot, his shot blocking, all this stuff. I value that. And I think it is criminally underrated, and I just wish he would get that, and I just think he's going to fall short in what could end up being his best chance to make the All-Star team in his career, unfortunately.
So I'll say this, Jack, that 2 things. One, they might look at that and say Kristaps Porzingis has been an All-Star. Let's give Derek White some flowers here for a season where he's definitely delivering all-star caliber basketball and deserving of a selection. And it's our fault for not having expanded these rosters already. So let's give Derek White the honor, because this might be his only crack at it and he deserves it. And let's put him into this game. It is also the type of festivity where I think Trae Young belongs for what this is and who it's catering to and his style of play and all that. Maybe they do decide we'll go with 2 guards and be just fine, and Derek White ultimately gets in that way. Secondly, beyond it just being, let's bend the rules a little bit, if you will, to get Derek White in, the metrics make an airtight case for him. And I've written about this, and it's become trite for me to use this particular metric, even on this show, but it really drives it home that there's only 4 players in at least the 92nd percentile in estimated plus minus on both sides of the ball. And it's Derek White, and it's Joel Embiid, and it's Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and it's Giannis. And I think Kawhi might still be in there too. So there's 5. And I mean, if you look at that, not that that's the be all end all, but it certainly captures that Derek White is one of the players making the most impact across the board on both ends of the floor.
100%. I don't know what I said with the camera there. I pressed a button and something happened, but I couldn't agree more. We all know I'm the biggest Derek White guy. I hope he gets in. I don't know if he has a real chance, but I think that'd be great. For what it's worth, though, Kristaps has technically never played in the All-Star game, so maybe they look at that too. But we'll see what happens. I don't know. I'd like my guy D White. I want him in there, man. I want him to get in. But
I'd like him to get in. I do worry that this is going to be his only real crack at it. I'm not sure if having 2 guys from the front court out feels like it gives Porzingis the nod. And at that point, I feel like Derek White won't get the other spot.
I agree, but we can hope, and I'm going to continue to do so until they announce it. Adam Silver, please. I know you're listening to this, Adam, clearly. Come on.
Adam
Anyways,
Silver,
any final
subscriber to the pod, do the right thing.
You know it. Any final thoughts before we get out of here?
Yeah, I think we covered it all.
Phenomenal. Well, thank you all for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe to How About Them Celtics. Check out all of Bobby's work at si.com/Celtics. Inside the Celtics is the name of the site. You can follow Bobby on Twitter at Bobby Kravitsky. You can follow me on Twitter at JacksonMoneNBA. You can follow Sam too if you'd like at Sammy France NBA. That's it for us. Goodbye.